Hello and welcome to this week's Get Clued Up. This week with your Students' Union we have invited Christians Against Poverty to come and speak to us about financial management and budgeting. So over to you, John.
Hi, good afternoon. It's lovely to be here with you this afternoon to just talk to you about money management and getting clued up on budgeting. So I'm John Thompson, going to be your host this afternoon. Just going to go through a couple of topics, but let me introduce myself. So I've been running budgeting courses with Christians Against Poverty for the last 8 years now over in South London, and also served as a debt coach for people with unmanageable debt in the SE region for 5 years. Retired that role about 18 months to 2 years ago. So this is what we're going to be covering here. Going to be looking at the importance of budgeting, a brief look at how to budget. We're going to look specifically at the CAP money system, so a methodology that CAP provided a number of years ago to help people manage their money better. So good system there. CAP's online tools. So once you've got the system, how can you kind of keep track of it and create your own? Benefits of using cash. One of the fundamentals of the system is how to use cash well. And I appreciate we're in this sort of COVID sort of era where cash may be a dirty word, or the use of cash. So when I'm referring to cash, we'll be talking about cash and its alternatives or hybrids, which may be contactless cards in a particular way. And then a promotion of the courses that CAP provides and how you might be able to get onto a CAP money student course for yourselves. So I suppose let's start with a little bit of an introduction. So why is budgeting important? I mean, clearly budget is important because it helps you control your spending, helps you keeps from being overwhelmed. If I give you a little bit of my background and why I'm so passionate about money courses and budgeting, primarily because in 2000 I graduated. It's a bit of an old duffer now, and enjoyed my university years, and I was very fortunate to come away with about £1,000 worth of student debt. But if we roll the clock forward two and a half years later, I was about £25,000 in debt. That was through employment and then being unemployed, losing my contract, becoming self-employed, and it was a really bad time. I did some of the traditional stuff that lots of people do and several of my clients had done, which is I buried my head in the sand, not owning up to my debts because I didn't find any solutions to get out of them, and ended up just for the next couple of years just kind of wandering around, not really paying attention to it, getting things such as county court judgments, and not answering the letters to my creditors. Then after a period of time, things got a bit better with terms of work and jobs, and I was able to own up to some of my debts, and then began the journey of about 4.5 years of me paying all of that debt back. And that was painful because I was living on about 1/3 of my income, 2/3 of my income at that stage. So being able to keep from being overwhelmed, as I was in that example, budgeting will also help you avoid getting in debt or getting out of debt. It'll help you get out of debt. Definitely helped me get out of debt. Keep you organized. The system that I'm about to show you will help you do that. And it will help you prepare for emergencies. I remember my parents came over from the Caribbean and they said, you got to save money for a rainy day, and it rained all the time here. So, the emergencies here hopefully won't be the weather. It will just be some other challenges. But if you've budgeted or you can prepare or put money aside, then hopefully you'll be in a better place. Additionally, what budgeting do for you? It will help you make better financial decisions, prepare you for emergencies, help you get out of debt, as I kind of mentioned, and stay focused on longer term goals. So what are we going to talk about here? How can we control your spending? A method of controlling your spending is, very simple stuff would be, don't spend too much. But that's just too simple to say, and much more harder to do. Don't spend too much. So we need a system, we need a methodology to be able to do that, to be able to track what your expenses are, importantly, know what your income is, and then save as well. Now, this phrase is borrowed from the Bible, but it's really quite apt for where we are today. And it's basically saying, wise planning will watch over you and understanding will keep you safe. Another way of putting that is to say, good sense will scout the danger ahead of you, and insight will keep an eye out for you. Or in simple language, have the good sense to plan ahead. Let's see what's coming ahead, see how far off it is, and so that as it gets a bit closer, I know how to deal with it. So that's what we're going to learn in brief today, and I'd encourage you to come along to a Cap Money student course, which I'll share with you at the end. So the simple tools of building a budget are this. What we want to do is, if we just keep it really simple, we're going to list all of our income. We're going to work out how much is coming in. So how much money from the different sources: maintenance loan, maintenance grant, bursaries, bank of mum and dad, your part-time job, your work, etc., selling stuff, etc., whatever your creative abilities are. Work out how much is coming in and the frequency of that. List out all the expenditure. So we're going to work out how much is going out, add them up, and make it balance. Okay. Now, that seems really quite straightforward and simple, and it's a bit more involved than that, but let's get into the nitty-gritty of that. So, how to budget? Let's look at that. So, for you guys, that might look like this. So, what is the sorts of income streams that one might have? So, that might be a maintenance loan, bursary, savings, and we're going to list those down. So, maintenance loans are coming kind of termly. And so we want to kind of put that frequency in and then multiply that up, 3 or 4 times, and then total it up. Same with the bursary and savings. And then we want to get what that total is. Next will be looking at the non-monthly expenditure. So that might be coming to areas like accommodation, travel and rail passes, that sort of stuff. And we want to list that down. And then we obviously want to make sure that we can come up with a yearly figure, because your maintenance and maintenance grants are supposed to take you from 1 September, October through to the next, not just end when the last term ends. And so you need to budget for that. So that's why we take that down as a yearly figure. And then we want to figure out how much that is per month. I'll show you why that's important shortly. So here's an example. This is Rosie's budget. So as you can see, Rosie's budget, it doesn't quite balance yet, so there's a little bit more work to do. And we'd on the course, we would teach you how to cut down, cut back, cut out in those sorts of areas to kind of make your budget balance. And so here we got an example here. So we got maintenance loan, 3,375 a year. We got some savings there, 3,356, and we got a charity or bursary that's 250. So we need to kind of add all those up. Obviously, then in the next section, we've got the accommodation costs, 3,900, some travel costs, 330, and we can total that up. And then you can see the numbers in the bottom right-hand corner here. So that's just the income. Hopefully that's fairly clear. Just trying to pull some of that information together. Okay, and you might have more lines to put in there. So you might also have part-time job or other sorts of allowances or other sorts of income. It might be bank of mum and dad, that might be a bit more infrequent, etc. And so you need to list that sort of income down as well. And this is an example of what that might look like. I'm going to cover the term account holding. So this is amount from account holding. I'm going to cover that term a little bit later. But we got some amount that's coming in from that place. And then we got an allowance in here. So once we worked out what our income is, we said we're going to list our income. And then we need to list our expenditure. And we need to work out the difference. So we've listed our income. And we need a way, really, basically, to work out our expenditure. But before we kind of dive into listing out all the things there are in our expenditure, we need a system to be able to manage all of that. Okay, and the basic system, the basic Cap Money system is this. We have our income coming in, and then we have 3 other accounts. Okay, so your income is what we just described earlier. Then we have 3 other accounts. We see this center one, this purpley pink color, depending upon what your screen resolution is. It's purpley pink color, right in the center. It says regular payments account. So what you notice is that there's an arrow coming in and there's 3 arrows coming out. Okay, the regular payments account is essentially set up so that you can manage your direct debits and standing orders, your regular payments. So let's just cover those 2 terms, direct debits and standing orders. So direct debits are contractual arrangements that you have with a third party. You sign some sort of agreement. You typically see that with a mobile phone or internet service providers or utility providers, where you sign an agreement to have them go into your account on a particular day after they've sent you a notification of what that will be and withdraw that money from your account. That's a direct debit. A standing order is different. So you notice there in the first case, you have given authority and control to a third party. With a standing order, you have authority and control, and it's your payment that you're setting up to send to either yourself or your other accounts. In this case, we're saying that that should be to the cash account and that should be the savings account, or it is to another party. So if we go straight down and we're looking at the regular payments account, this is all the direct debits and standing orders that are in existence for you and your budgeting that you have in play. Okay, so you might have a regular standing order for something, but in most cases it would probably be direct debits. Okay, now we can calculate that figure. When we're creating our expenditure, we can calculate that figure because it's going to be more or less the same every frequency, every quarter, every month. They're going to be nigh on the same. I appreciate if they're utilities, they'll be a little bit higher in the winter months and a little bit lower in the summer months. And I appreciate that with mobile phone bills, they may go up and down. But in general, we can calculate that number to a reasonable degree of accuracy. If we go to the left on the screen, you can see that we have the cash account. So we can see here that what's happening is that from the regular payments account, we have a standing order. So that's money leaving one of your accounts, going to another one of your accounts. And that is where we are having money sent across for all the items that we would put in our budget, which we would call cash items. Now, examples of those sorts of cash items might be groceries, food shopping. It might be, whatever the traditional spends that you would have that you would use cash with. Now, let's kind of overcome this sort of cash term. So depending upon how you feel about cash, and also depending upon how the organizations, institutions, places that you shop at will treat cash, you might need a little bit of a hybrid of that system. But in short, what I'm saying is we're going to use physical cash and spend that, and there are good reasons to do that. Or you're going to have a contactless card system, an account that just has that money in it, and it has a contactless card, and you're going to use that. And when that account is gone or that account is used up weekly, then that's all you've got to spend that week. Wait until it's replenished the following week to use the next load. Okay, moving to the right, what we have there is standing orders, a standing order for the savings account. And this essentially is what I would call agreed expenditure across the course of 1 year, 1 year, 18 months, that sort of time frame. So it could be items such as if you were paying things on an annual basis. So sometimes you pay TV licenses on an annual basis. It might be travels or trips back home. If you are distant from home, you need to be able to travel back home. You don't have necessarily a car. You might need to get on a train. So you need to save up that money to be able to do that. However frequently that might be. It might be other trips. It might be holidays. You might be getting on a flight when we can resume and do that in the traditional way. It might be that you have a particular event. It might be a wedding. Similarly, you might have other events such as birthdays and Christmas. These are certain things where you want to save up a certain amount of money for a particular person you know, like, or love, and putting that aside is just a sensible plan rather than having this massive spike in your expenditure in that particular month. Hopefully that's making sense. So we have 3 accounts. This is the Cap Money system, a regular payments account, a cash account, and a savings account. Now, features of that account, well, these accounts are that they should not have an overdraft, and there's no overdraft facilities in this. This is money coming in and it's populating each of these accounts. There's no overdraft facilities. It's just what is in there is being used for what you've put into your budget. Okay, let's move on. So I've introduced you to the Cap Money system. I'm now just going to introduce you to creating the items that fall into the budget. So the expenditure items. So if we consider that there are certain groupings that one would put their expenditure in, here are some examples of that. So we got some home expenditures, guess what, electricity, rent, mortgage, etc. We got some living expenses. These might be some of the items that you spend cash on. So food and supplies, clothing and footwear, health costs, glasses, etc., laundry. These all might be kind of some of the cash costs. Travel, depending upon how you do that, you need to obviously note that down. Then there are some course costs, which you will inevitably have. Some leisure costs. Leisure obviously is essential to mental health and well-being, so we need to make sure that we put that in our budget. Creating budgets is not just about squirreling money away and not enjoying ourselves and enjoying our life. Then I put some future needs items, and these are some of the items that I was kind of describing that may go in the cash account, giving, charity giving, etc. And if you're managing or have to manage any debts, then we need to incorporate that into the budget because that's just part of your expenditure. And all we would do here is just put that amount into the relevant column. So for example, direct debit standing orders might mainly be in this first home category. So I put a number in for rent, water, mortgage, etc. as appropriate for your living expenses and your lifestyle, etc. So some of those cash items, foods and supplies, may go into the cash account. If you see me looking to the left, it's because I've got a second screen that helps me to see what's going on here. And then in the end, what we're going to do is we're going to total all the income, we're going to total all the expenditure, which is what we're looking at in this main part of the screen now. And then one minus the other, we've got that balance to see whether the budget balance is. I'm just going to talk about, yes, so I'm just going to give my colleague a heads up. So just after I've done this slide, we're going to go into the holding account, which is just a little video to kind of explain it a little bit more in that. So once I finish that screen, we'll just look at a little video. So here, what we have is a slight variation on what I've just described to you to account for the fact that your income is not coming in on a regular basis. And apologies, it says in the top right-hand corner there, termly direct debits and standing orders for regular payments. So it says termly direct debits and standing orders for regular payments. So what we got here is all those three accounts that I just described: regular payments, cash account, and savings account. And I appreciate this looks like an overload of accounts, but I currently use this and have used it for the last number of years, being married and having 2 kids, and it works perfectly well as it does for a student, as it does for leaving education. And trust me, it's a really good system. And so the holding account would probably be the student account that you currently have. So that's where your maintenance loan, maintenance grants, any of your income goes into. And what we're proposing is that you have 3 other accounts that sit underneath that, and then you use this holding account to feed those other 3 areas and then spend accordingly from those accounts. So how might that practically work? You receive your maintenance loan, your maintenance grant, your bursaries, your Bank of Mum and Dad checks into that holding account, and then you set up your standing orders into those other accounts once you've calculated your expenditure and you know how much is sitting in each of those areas. And that can be done very simply through the Cap Money system and the Cap Money course. So I'll give you access to being able to go and join a course to get the full information on how to do this properly over kind of 3 weeks. And give you some information on how to do that. And then you will have access to a tool that will enable you to kind of put all those numbers in that is described here or shown here very easily and very efficiently. And then it will calculate how much is in each of those places. So unless you fancy a bit of pen and paper, then you can just enroll on the course and obtain that information on a separate portal. So you would then calculate how much is in each of those accounts, and then you would pay for your standing orders, direct debits from the regular payments account. So you can just set that up and let it go, okay? Because you've set that money aside. You then have your weekly cash. That might be where you spend on your groceries and your nights out and that sort of stuff. And then you have the items in your savings account, which you can either spend directly from or feed into your cash account, depending upon how what method you use to pay for those items. And those three systems, those three accounts should keep you right in being able to balance your budget. One, assuming that the income is greater than the expenditure, or that you can balance those two, and two, give you a measure of control of what's happening. Can I switch over to you to play the video for me? Is that great?
By now, you will have had a chance to build your budget, optimize it, and maybe in some cases you'll have had to have made a few tough calls. Though having a budget is great in principle, it means nothing if you don't have a system to make it work. You may remember the three accounts that I mentioned when I was talking with Rosie. That's the cap money system, the regular payments account, the cash account, and the savings account. You'll need to set up a separate bank account for each of these. But as well as those three bank accounts, you'll need to have a separate bank account above that, which in most cases will be your student account, and that will be called the holding account, to smooth out some of those irregular income flows that you have because you're a student. Imagine this piggy bank teapot is your holding account, and you've just got all your money in at the beginning of term. The temptation is to take the lid off and spend it all on yourself. The cap money system should work like this. In Rosie's case, she gets her loan. That goes straight into her holding account. As well as that, she's got her allowance on a monthly basis from her parents. So each month she's going to get a little amount coming in and coming in. That is why you need the holding account, because you get some really variable income sources as a student. Now this might be a bit messy on the first time through, but the beauty of it is, once it's set up, once it's sorted out, once that system is going, it'll just run itself. There won't be any problems there. You'll just need to check on it every now and again, but that system is in place, and those standing orders will continue to draw down those amounts to the regular payments, to the cash account, and also to your savings. The holding account is vital for you as a student, so you have a steady flow of income coming down rather than an irregular flow of income that just comes in at dribs and drabs throughout the year and disappears without you having any idea where it's come from or even where it's going to.
Fantastic. Welcome back. So hopefully that gives you a good summary of where we've been. I'm happy to take some questions a little bit later. So let's just summarize those accounts. So in looking at how to build a budget, we talked about 4 types of accounts. First one in the purple section is the regular payments account. And I recommend that is a basic or current account. No overdrafts there, and what's it for? All regular payments, bills, direct debits. So the features there that you need in that account are direct debits, standing orders, and giving, if you have that as part of your expenditure. The next then would be the cash account. So the cash account is a basic account again for that you need to have direct debits on. Your general living expenses, so that might be food, clothing, transport, this sort of items. The next account would be a savings account, and a savings account is an easy access type of account. You know, traditionally, lots of students have that sort of account, and lots of people have that sort of account already. And all you need there is a card would be helpful, but it's not essential, because with the advent of online banking, you can just transfer funds from one place to another fairly readily or fairly easily, or even in a lot of cases on a phone or on a tablet on a computer. And there, the savings sorts of items are, holidays, Christmas, birthdays, longer term savings. Now, I said agreed expenditure across the course of the year. You can obviously use it for longer term items, depending upon what that looks like. Clearly, as you move on in your life and your career, you might have separate areas for longer term savings, such as cars or deposits for houses. You don't really want to mix that in with your general savings. And the primary reason for that is, there's always the temptation to spend it or to rob Peter to pay Paul if you have an emergency come up. So having a longer term item like a house or a deposit for a house in a separate area, like an ISA or something like that, whatever might be the most appropriate vehicle for you to do, would be a good thing. But this is longer term savings here that you might need across the next 12 to 18 months, say. The next item, the next account, is the holding account. You probably already have that, your student account, if you've registered for one. And that is where all the regular regulating or termly income and expenditures will come into. So that means that the things that will go out of that will be your termly rent, your termly rail cards, your course fees, those sorts of items. So we just have this hierarchy of accounts. So let me just go back and show you that diagram there. So you have your income coming in, goes into your holding account, and then you have 3 other accounts kind of set up to manage that. Now, they can all be with the same bank, they can be with different banks. It really depends on how you are set up and what is the most efficient way to manage that. Okay. So what are some of the CAP online tools that will help you put this together? If you go along to, there's a big long URL there, but quite simply, if you go to capuk.org, so capuk.org, you'll be able to navigate to the page that says, I want help courses for CAP money, and you should be able to register there. You'll notice that in the top right-hand corner here, you can put in the postcode. We're based over in South London, although the courses are virtual. At some point, they may go back to being physical courses. If you put the postcode or South London postcode, in fact, you can put any part of the country postcode in, you should be able to pick up a course. Now, there aren't always very, very frequent student courses. So if you kind of put in the like an SW9 or an SE11 postcode, you'll generally pick up the courses that we run from St Mark's Kennington virtually, and you'll be able to pick up myself and my team to be able to run those courses. For your information, there's a course running in April. There's a student course running in April, and it will be on the first 3 Mondays of the month. So that'll be the 5th, the 12th, and the 19th. So that's 5th, 12th, and 19th. And you'll be able to come into that course and register and gain access to the tools. So by putting the postcode in, you'll get something up like this, and it'll show you where the courses are, and you can click on it and register for the course. Going back. So when you register for the course, and you completed the first week, you'll gain access. You'll register, and then you'll gain access once you've done the first week. The individuals on the course will register you for the online systems. The online systems will enable you to have the budget worksheets. So those sheets that we were looking at earlier on, these sheets here are electronic, and so you'll be able to enter all the information in on these pages yourself and put them in the relevant columns, and then the system will top them up and tell you how much needs to be in every single one of those accounts. So you'll register, and then you'll click on this center section here, the budget worksheet, and then you'll be able to enter all of that information in, your income and your expenditure. So I've talked a little bit about using cash, and just going to kind of just talk through why I think that's a good idea. So just being in touch with the money that you have is a good thing. I don't know if you've ever really thought about what happens when you go in and you make a transaction with your card. There's a couple of things that happen. You take your card out, you've got your items all set up there, let's call it at the supermarket. you finally put them in the trolley and you go to pay, and you take the card out your pocket and you put it over the amount that you're going to pay. Like, I confirm this is what I want to pay. There may be a noise. In lots of cases, there's not a noise, and then you walk away. You might get this crumpled receipt. You take this receipt, you crumple it, and you stick it in the bag. Now, let's just walk through what happens when you use cash. I don't know about you, but if I'm given a red note or a purple note or an orange note, your 50s, your 20s, your 10s, and I then go to use it in a transaction, I do a couple of things. My heart quickens. Is this a good transaction? Because I don't like breaking a note. I don't want to break a 20 for a chocolate bar. That's got to be a really good transaction that I'm entering into. And then you get maybe some notes, and then you get some coins back. So you really value that transaction. And what we found, and statistically this is proved, that people tend to spend 20 to 30% less when they use cash, and they physically value the cash that they have in their pockets, than when they are using cards. Let's overcome the challenge of where you might be with cash and this COVID situation. If that is a problem, either using cash, as in you physically holding cash, you're not quite happy or comfortable with that, or the places that you may shop or frequent are not accepting cash as readily as they used to, then the alternative to that in this specific case would be that you have a contactless card that is set up for that account, and you use that account like you would do cash. But you've just got to bear in mind that there isn't that kind of sort of haptic feedback that you would have with using physical cash that's in your pocket. Okay, so is paying with cash better? I think the challenge there is it's countercultural, but there are advantages. And I think the advantages are that you have more of a relationship with your money if you're using cash than if you're using cards. You've got more an understanding. You've got a greater understanding. You can physically see what's happening, in your pocket, in your wallet. You can open it up and see how much is there. And I appreciate you could do that on all sorts of various apps and looking at your mobile phones. But there tends to be a little bit of a time lag with lots of these. What about benefits of cash? Diminishing the chances of overpaying. Don't know if you've ever been in that situation where you've been online and you've they charged you twice, or even been in store and they've charged you more, and you have to go through that whole rigmarole of getting a refund and all that process, and it can take a little bit of a while. Now, those are kind of minor things, I think, for a lot of cases, but if that's the money you're relying on and it takes you 2 to 3 days or even a week to kind of get that money repaid back to you, and those retailers or those shops sorting out those problems, that's going to create you some pain. Okay. What about the security risks? Depends on where you sit here. In this case, what you'll be doing is on a weekly basis, you'll be going to your account, you'll be drawing down some cash, you're physically holding the cash. I'll kind of describe what you would do with a contactless situation. And then you would just be taking out the bit of cash that you need. So the security is taking that amount out on a weekly basis and putting that somewhere. And in our case, we tend to have like a couple of jars that kind of separate it up into where we want it if it's not sitting in our wallets for the spends that we've got. And so in that case, the security is pretty well covered because it's down to your personal safety. In terms of the comparative security, I don't know how comfortable you are with internet banking and all this sort of stuff, and the hacks that are going on, and people taking money out of people's accounts, or cloning cards and things like that. You compare those risks for yourself, but I think the benefits of using cash outweigh the risks that I might have in just using a card when we're referencing just security. Okay, cash versus credit cards. So looking at cash versus credit cards, I think the benefits there are fairly obvious. Typically with credit cards, even if you go through an interest rate period, a free interest rate period, or a low interest rate period, at some point, the benefit to the financial institutions is that they are going to charge you interest, which is just more money on the top of the borrowing that you have. So, in simple terms, it's better not to be in that situation. If you do have credit cards already existing, great if you've got zero interest, but you've borrowed money and you need to pay it back. And so we showed earlier that needs to be featured in your budget. But in this area of the benefits of cash using cards, when you've created your budget, there isn't a space, interestingly enough, in the budget for credit cards. And the reason why it's not in there is because it should be covered, other than repaying credit card debt, which is down here. You should have all the other items listed in your budget. And again, being a little bit countercultural, if you don't have a budget for it, then ideally, the ideal scenario would be that you don't spend on it and you just apply a little bit of good habits and disciplines to not put yourself in the situation where you're going to have to spend. And I appreciate that may be challenging and difficult with peer group pressure and with my friends are going to do this, or I need to go and do that. But if you can put yourself into the mindset of managing that well, then you'll be in a better place. So cash versus debit cards. Aside from so there's no credit issue in that sense. It's just convenience factor, and I think we've kind of covered that earlier. So if you can use cash, then I think it's better. If you can't use cash, then I would use a debit card in a traditional sense. If that is challenging, then you always have pay-as-you-go cards that you can use, where you can top them up, which is the sort of area that we're talking about, kind of top-up cards, and use that as your cash card. Okay, so I suppose the bottom line it comes down to is I'm proposing the case that cash is better. You get more haptic feedback. You get more feedback about what is happening with your cash by looking and seeing it physically than you do with it being on a card. And it's very easy to kind of just put it aside and not think about it. Don't know if you've ever been to the cash point and played cash point roulette. How lucky do you feel today and putting your card in and hoping that you can get some money out? Well, you wouldn't necessarily have to do that if you've managed your finances well and can budget well and draw down cash on a regular basis. You should be able to see that. Okay, so takeaways I think from the cash argument there is sticking to cash, cold hard cash for your routine daily transactions may ultimately help your wallet. Using cash has shown, sorry for the typo, has shown that one spends less when compared to using cards. And monitoring your weekly cash is easier because you can see it readily. And if you can see it, then you can manage it, you can control it. I know that in when I was at university and working at the same time, having a part-time job, there would often be the case, and similarly when I moved into my first series of employments, there's often the case of there was more month than money. And I had to kind of cut back on everything I did. In this sort of manner and managing your money well, you should have less occurrences of that, because it doesn't take you very long to run out of money in your first couple of days to realize that you've got to allow it to last for the week when you're taking weekly cash. Okay, I think that is me wrapping up. I'm happy to enter into some questions. You can register for the course, like I said, on the Cap Money website. And if you are in London or put in a London postcode, you'll be easier to spot the ones that are in South London, where my team will be running student courses. And I said that they commence on April the 5th, April the 12th, and April 19th. So the first one week one will be on the 5th. They typically start at 7 o'clock, so they start at 7 o'clock until 9, 7 for a 7:15 start until 9 on every single one of those days. So first 3 Mondays, 7 for a 7:15 start until 9, and we'll run through the student course and material that I've just briefly described here today. So that is me kind of wrapping up. I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any from anybody.
Great, thank you, John. We did have one question that was about, do you have any tips on stopping spontaneous spending?
So I suppose in terms of spontaneous spending, it comes down to what area is that in. So one of the best ways that I find in stopping spontaneous spending is one, dispense with the card, use cash, and then it's valuing that transaction. If you spontaneously spend and you spend through your food budget on something that you don't necessarily need, you'll soon after a couple of days realize that wasn't a great spend. So that's one way. It's kind of valuing the transaction and bringing more relationship to you and your money by seeing it and valuing that transaction that you have. And cash is a great way to be able to do that.
Okay, thank you very much. I can't recommend the Cap Money course more. Like, if you want to sign up, please do get in contact. John, where should people contact you? Or if they are interested or answering any questions they might have had if they watched this on repeat.
Sure. So you can drop me an email. So CAP at St Mark's Kennington. So that's St Marks Marks Kennington KENNING .org. So CAP at St Mark's Kennington. So the Church St Mark's Kennington. So CAP at St Mark's Kennington.org, and I'll pick up an email from there if you've got any queries and questions. Yeah, great.
Great. Thank you very much. Cool.
No worries.
So our Get Clued Up next week is on women in film, and that's with Lois Stevenson, who's a director. We've got a producer coming who's Angela Monarchy, actress Isara Barbe Brown, and hosted by Isra Al Kassi, she is the co-founder of the Tape Collective. So join us next Wednesday, the 10th, from 2 p.m. for like a really exciting panel and Get Clued Up discussion, and hopefully see you then. Thank you very much.